Welcome to the Touchdown with Aaron Masemola, an opportunity for you to interact with some of your sporting heroes. And of course, the big opportunity is for you to ask them some of your favorite questions. Today, we've got an absolutely legendary cricketer in South Africa, a truly illustrious career. And of course, one of the greatest honors that he's received quite recently is being named one of the greatest ever overseas player for English county cricket team, Warwickshire. And when you look at his career, the numbers speak for themselves. And as we know, numbers absolutely don't lie. And taking a massive 2,500 wickets over his 300 test matches for South Africa, his 272 ODIs, and so many other games that he played in terms of first team cricket as well for South Africa. And that's, of course, the legendary fast bowler, Allan Donald. Allan, how are you doing today?
Hi, thanks, Aaron. Great to be on your show. Yeah, I just heard you mentioned that accolade. I started my long career with Warwickshire in 1987, and there was a coach by the name of David Brown who came to South Africa in 1986, actually.
Oh, wow.
To have a look, because Warwickshire and South Africa had a exchange partnership where they send players to us, across South Africa, mainly Joburg, Cape Town, of course, and Durban. They sort of had an exchange program, and then he asked me whether I was keen to come out and play. Wow. So, look, I never blinked an eye on that offer, and I went over there as a young Afrikaans boy. Didn't really speak much proper English, so sort of very broken English, but I was so keen just to get stuck in, and that was the start of a very long relationship. And then, of course, you look back at it now, and I was contacted by a guy by the name of Brian Helford, who's a writer for the Warwickshire. He's produced many books, and he's a very, very clever man. And he started this thing about who's the best overseas player that's Warwickshire ever had, and followed it a little bit. And just to be amongst those five names, Alvin Kallicharran, who most people know played for Free State back in the day. A little genius of a batsman.
Indeed.
Then, of course, Rowan Kanai. Of course, I never really seen him play much, and met him once or twice when he was at Edgbaston. Brian Lara, of course, what an absolute genius of a player he was. In '94, he was unstoppable, and he just scored tons of runs. Just to be part of those five names, I would absolutely take it. If you said to me, I would be part of five overseas players, and then to be nominated by the members and the fans to be the best overseas player was a massive feather in my cap, and I really appreciated those. It taught me so much right from the word go, stepping into the wide world, out of the army, straight into cricket, straight on your own. And just taught me so much about life. Also grew up learning my game in England from 87 to 91. When South Africa got back in international cricket. So, but it taught me a heck of a lot just about the person that I became, and the achievements that I had with such a wonderful club.
Very true. And I love what you mentioned there in terms of the names that you've been named amongst, because sometimes we forget the greatness of the past, because now you've got the Virat Kohlis of the world, you've got the AB de Villiers of the world, and we forget that some of the true legends of the game are some of those that aren't even playing anymore. And I love the fact that you have been named amongst this list of absolutely great English county players as well. I think I would love to take it back to the beginning of where you specifically fell in love with the sport of cricket. When's the first time you actually held a ball and you realized that, actually I'm bowling at quite a decent pace?
I was about 13. I was
Yeah.
about 13. I played very little cricket before that age. Actually,
Yeah.
I loved my rugby. I still do.
Mm.
Of course, a massive cheetah supporter.
I was about to ask you that
So
key question.
no, there's no doubt about that. I've always been a big cheetah supporter. So
That's good to hear.
yeah, I actually bowled. A lot of people laugh when I say I actually bowled some leg spin when I started,
Oh,
and
wow. Sure.
yeah, so I started off as a bit of a leggy. I fancied myself playing in the park, and so one of our players got injured, and so the teacher asked me whether I was keen just to bowl a few seam up, and
Mm.
so I said, okay, I'll give it a go. Never looked back. Never looked back
Yo.
since that day. And I bowled these big in-duckers, and
Yo.
you know, and I was excited about that because I knew there was something else that I've discovered all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And then, that's where our backyard cricket, our backyard test matches, our park test
Mm.
matches started back in those days. And of course, my friendship with the Hansi Cronje
Yeah.
and Frans Cronje, and of course, Evie Cronje started at primary school.
Mm.
And that really got me excited about cricket, So, and I realized at a young age, although I think my dad, my granddad, especially, they realized that I had a little bit of talent, and I should pursue this. And I think my uncle, Des Donald, he took over because he was at Brebner Primary School. He was the headmaster there
Yeah.
for many, many years. And so that's where that bond between uncle and nephew started. So it was a lovely, he taught me a lot about the game because he coached the Bloemfontein sides back in those days. He also was a very good hockey coach at national level as well. So his sporting background,
Yeah.
and he's a little, he's an old school guy. And
Yeah.
I know my uncle would forgive me. He's an old school tough guy,
Yes.
So he showed you tough love. So he was a good teacher, understands sports because he was not only a teacher and a headmaster, but he was also a very fine cricket coach in his own right. So I stuck close to him. He taught me a lot about, a lot of things really.
Yeah.
And that's how my career just blossomed from there on. I played for Free State under 13s, and then Bloemfontein schools under 15s, and of course then the under 19, 84, I think 84 and 85. I played for South African schools. The one year I was 12th man, and the next year Daryl Cullinan was the captain in 84, and Gary Kirsten was my captain in 85. So, and that relationship with Gary Kirsten just went on, and we played a lot of cricket for South Africa as well.
That's absolutely amazing. And I think playing cricket throughout your younger years, I would love to know, because I mean, for myself as a fast bowler, when I was in primary school and high school, we used to look up to the greats like Allan Donald. I would love to know, who did you specifically look up to, and who are some of the people that you thought that if I could possibly dream and imagine myself to be a specific cricketer or bowl a certain way, who were some of the names that came to your mind?
When I was at my grandparents' house a lot, because I was preparing for a game. So my mom and dad used to work weekends as well at the hospital, at the post office. So it was they had a long hours. So I stayed with my grandparents, and I used to really study but just get my cricketing world familiar with the names that's been out there. So the Cricketer magazine and the Wisden magazine, that's still going today. I used to page through them, and I looked at photos of Malcolm Marshall, Michael Holding, and ironically, I familiarized myself with the great West Indian quicks. I don't know why. And you look, I knew of Dennis Lilly, I knew of Vincent van der Bijl, Clive Rice, Hugh Page, Rupert Hanley, Stephen Jeffries, Garth Leroux, all these great South African bowlers, Mike Proctor, who became my coach a little bit later in my career. So, but it's difficult, you know, while I was playing and also while I was playing county cricket, I struggled with one thing, and that's I knew I had pace, but I struggled because I never had any rhythm. And I was looking for that, you know. Bob Woolmer then obviously came into the picture, and he changed my whole career. He changed my whole career, just simply because he was a scientist, he was a very good coach, and had an unbelievable understanding of what a bowling action should look like. So I looked at guys and, you know, tried to copy a few, and you know, it works for only like a few days, and then you try something else. But you know, I would like to urge, a lot of kids ask me about rhythm and stuff like that when you go in the coaching world, and I keep saying to them, experiment a lot. Don't be just single-minded. Don't be just single-minded and say, well, I want to be like so and so. So play around with looking at guys like, you know, Dale Steyn is a great example. Rabada is a great example. Keep trying to copying those guys. If it doesn't work, eventually you'll find out who you are and what your style is. So it took me a long time. And I think the definitive moment for me was when I was introduced to a sprint coach at Birmingham University. And I worked with this guy for about 4 weeks, and he taught me how to run properly. And that absolutely changed my whole career right round, because I became very deliberate in my approach, very slow, very rhythmical. The sprinters call it something like a word called bounce. You know, they never flat-footed. They touch and go, if you know what I mean. So, and that really put a new dimension to what I was looking for ultimately, and that just became my brand.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely beautiful. And one of the big things that I've noticed about the great Allan Donald is the fact that you're also a family man. You're also a man that is well grounded, and that's where you almost find your strength, because we all know that sports and work is such an important part of our lives. But at the end of the day, you do need to return home. And you mentioned the support of your grandparents and your parents as well. How important is family to you, and it has been throughout your career?
Well, I must say, when I was playing, before I actually got that step higher, you know, I was lucky enough that my granddad, my two uncles, my dad, and even my granny back then, they were great cricket lovers, and they paid a lot of interest in what I was doing, and my uncles and aunts and all sorts. So they were well aware of what I can achieve if I just put my head to it, and they realized quickly that I was quite driven about what I wanted to achieve. I think that's the great thing about today's youngsters out there, that you have to have that inner drive and inner passion, and you know, you're going to have a lot of bumps and bruises along the way, but once you get through there and you realize what you can do, it's amazing how far you can go. But I mean, I got married in 1991 to an English lady from Birmingham, and you know, then professional cricket and professional cricket became international cricket, and then you know, along came two children, Hannah and Oliver. When one's married already. My daughter got married last December the 16th, and my son Oliver is currently in the UK sitting out this coronavirus. But to balance that between what your passion is and what your work is an extremely difficult thing, and there's a lot of sacrifices that you make to have that balance in life, in your professional life, you know. And I've been unbelievably lucky and blessed that My family, my wife, my two kids have been glued to me from a very young professional age. So, and it's, yeah, I mean, it's tough. It really is tough, and it puts a lot of strain. We often talk about the golfers, the golfers that travel with families these days. It's a very, very difficult thing. And also, I think that if I look at the current modern day cricketer now and what is involved in now, you're playing in all the leagues across the world. Test matches are ramped up, one-day internationals, World Cups, T20 World Cups. It's incredible how these guys have got to find a balance to with their family and the sport that they dearly love. But look, I've got through it now, and I've in the coaching world now, so it doesn't get any easier anyway. But I've been very blessed anyway.
Very true. I would love to hear from you. You mentioned your son and your daughter, and one of the special things that I've come to notice about you in terms of your fan base and how we as fans know Allan Donald is that's of course the White Lightning, because of how blistering fast your balls are when you actually bowl. Is there any specific nicknames that your family, maybe your uncle or maybe your daughter or son have given you throughout the years, something that we as fans might not know?
I think that when I played for Free State, I did my groin once, and I was I was at the Cronier's house actually when it happened, because I stayed over. I caught a lift with Hansie to the ground every day, so I did my groin, and his mum actually. I don't know if I should mention this on air, but she nicknamed me Slingerling. So, so just put 1 and 2 together and go a little bit further of, having injured your groin. So and that's where that name stuck, from France and Hester Cronier, and of course Hansie's mum never stopped naming that, so they always call me Sling. So I've been called other names as well, Al Bundy, the great legendary, well, I wouldn't call it legendary Al Bundy, but Mark Boucher started calling me that when he was behind the stumps. Then Graham Smith was ultimately started calling me Bundy. So, and then the White Lightning thing was an interesting one, because it was in Sydney in 93-94 series, our first Aussie tour away, when we blitzed Australia in that unbelievable test match where we only defended 116. And the next day in the papers, the Sydney Morning Herald, it was White Lightning blows Australia away. And, and it just started from there. So. Yeah, that's how it's stuck, and it's not about the white paint or the wall paint. So that was added a little bit later on.
Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. Trust me, I think that's a gem. Many people might not have heard that. I think looking at your career, I mean, you've got such an illustrious career. You've played with so many greats. For example, your stint in England, your stint for South Africa, in terms of being a youngster, and also towards the latter part of your career. In terms of some of the players that really stand out for you, in terms of partnerships that you've possibly bowled with, who are some of the names that really stand out for you?
Is it just in general? No South African teammates that you're talking about?
Yeah, just in general, overall, because your career spans far and wide.
I was lucky enough to have an open door to a lot of players. My very first game against Ian Botham was in '87. So I played against Worcester and busted a gut, and I was in awe about this guy Botham and Graham Dilley, because they just won the Ashes. They came back from the 80s, 85, 86 Ashes, or 86, 87 Ashes, and they absolutely cleaned the Australians up over there. In my dressing room, there was a certain guy by the name of Gladstone Small. Those guys who don't know Gladstone Small, he's the guy with no neck. And but he became a great friend, and we still talk. A great bowler, a magnificent teammate, and although he doesn't rate himself as a coach, but he was a coach to me. But coming back to that story, I walked past our dressing room, and Ian Botham was sitting there. He was the last man, still sipping on his glass of wine at the end of the day's play, and he called me in, and his agent was sitting next to him, and he just said to me, "Well bowled. It was a great day. Well bowled." I was only 19, 20 years old, and for him to say that, I thought you hung really well. And then you start moving around the country, the counties, and just to, the guys that were there were Richard Hadley, who I spent a lot of time with, just understanding his psyche and philosophy about fast bowling. Then the great Malcolm Marshall came along. He was Hampshire's coach, and I spent 4 days, played a 4-day game down in Southampton against him. And Malcolm Marshall, I spent in his dressing room almost, probably 2.5 days out of the 4, I spent just listening to his stories. Incredible. Wow. I think I rate him as the best fast bowler I have ever seen. He took 12 wickets against Warwickshire in my first meeting against Hampshire with the 2 Smith brothers, Robert and Chris. And Malcolm Marshall, I sat in the opposite stand. I just wanted to go and have a look and see what this guy does, how he moves up and down the crease. Where does he swing it from? How does he line batters up? How does he set them up? And it was a show. It was an absolute show to see, and a lesson to see, an exhibition really, to see how this guy does things, And I was lucky in that time. There was a lot of good West Indian players there. Got a lot of good Australian players, Border, War, and of course Gordon Greenwich, Haynes, top West Indian players that were still operating in county cricket. So I had access to some amazing knowledge that was open. It was an open door. Come in, sit down, have a drink. I think the modern day game now, as people will always say that you're old school, you guys, all you did was the day's play. Of course, you were tired, but you learnt your game. You learnt your game in the opposition change room, and that's that. Robbie East for Free State one day told me, "Come with me, sit next to me, keep your mouth shut, and listen." And they took me into the Transvaal dressing room, which were Rice, Sylvester Clark, Mackenzie, all these great players, Jimmy Cook. So look, I was very lucky to have spent so much time amongst those players. They were incredible. Their knowledge was unbelievable, and it's something that just goes in, and you bank the whole time. It was absolutely awesome.
Wow. Absolutely amazing, because I think sometimes the importance of learning and being invested in the process and the opportunities that you had to learn from some of the greats is also testament to why you in your own right, in your own career, became so great as well, because you were able to become a sponge and absorb that wisdom as well. And I'm certain amongst all the focus and the hard nature of cricket, because we all know that we as cricketers are quite competitive, I'm sure there was some banter as well. I would love to hear some of the stories, because I think for many of us young cricketers, I think the slips is also a very good part, because you're standing right behind the batsman, the fast bowlers coming in, and you can throw in a chirp here and there. What are some iconic moments that when you think of just fielding, not necessarily bowling, you can really think of some special moments? And especially as I ask you the question, I think of somebody like Makai Ntini, who's always been talking on the side of the field. Is there any specific moment that stands out for you?
They can't be mentioned. Some of them are quite rude. I won't go there. But I think Makai.
is there maybe one that's a little bit good to hear on the air, maybe?
Yeah. I was actually, it was, there was a part, you know, there were some tough teams that we played. Shane Warne is the best chirper in the world. There's no question about it. He is very methodical. He's sometimes extremely rude, oversteps the line. But my word, he was clinical, and he was brilliant at the way he chatted to batsmen, and to try and get into their psyche. And look, I think it was probably past my playing days when I was coaching Warwickshire, and I was walking around the ground, and Jonathan Trott was standing at first slip, and Neil Carter was the bowler. He was left arm seamer for Warwickshire, quite quick, big, burly, stocky guy. He's now coaching at Bishop's. He's the sports organizer there at Bishop's school in Cape Town. And he was trying to say to him, because Trotty was struggling to get something out in Afrikaans. You know? So, and I was watching this, and he was saying to me, how do you say bowl hom die inswaier in Afrikaans? Bowl him the inswinger. And I said to him, just shout out, bowl him the inswaier. And he proceeded then to shout across from about 50 yards away, across the field from the city end of Birmingham, bowl him the einswinger. You know, look,
that almost sounds Russian.
It is. It's got a bit of, I don't know, a bit of something else in there as well, probably. But I absolutely just fell to the ground and laughter, and even the members behind me said, you know, what happened there, you know. Look, I tell you what, there was some, I think I played against Merv Hughes in '94. He was big, hard-nosed Australian with a big moustache. He's one of the toughest men I ever played against, and I think that he was one of the. He wouldn't just mince his words 100%. You know, he would tell you exactly what he thought of you, and he was a funny man as well. You know, so. Look, there's so many bantering moments out there. I think mostly on my side is hardcore. It's tough. It's Rodney Hall called me something I would never ever tell to anyone. He was just trying to get into a young South African, and he was as hard as nails as well. But look, I think that there were some great guys I played against, and they kept themselves quite clean during those days. They played hard, but boy, when you know you walk off that field at the end of the day's play, you can sit and you can have a beer together, and that's how the sport should be played.
Absolutely true. I fully agree with that. And I love the fact that there's so much banter in cricket, but also on the receiving end is you're a man who is used to bowling quite quick at the opponent. If I may ask, is there maybe some fast bowler that maybe towards the tail end maybe of your career, or at some specific point of your career, that you had to bat against somebody that was quite quick and you were like, shoot, I'm not sure how I'm going to face this ball?
Yeah, Brett Lee is number one. I walked in at the MCG. It was a late afternoon Boxing Day, and we won the toss, and I think we didn't particularly have a great day, but I was in second new ball, and as I took guard, I looked down to where Brett Lee was coming from, and that same man, Shane Warne, he actually met me halfway and asked me if I was okay, and I said, yeah, I'm good. He said, you're about to face some real pace now. You've come to the end of your playtime. Wow. You've got a new sensation here. Enjoy. So he's only bowled one ball. I've got 5 to face, and I will never forget. I did try to York me first ball. Brett Lee didn't really say much, to be honest. He let his bowling do the talk, which is I think a great way of going about it.
Yeah.
And the next one was a bouncer that I didn't really pick up all that quickly, and I'd sort of turned my head. I was actually bracing myself for the hit, and it missed me, thankfully. And as I turned around, I saw the ball fly through to Adam Gilchrist, who stood miles back. And I looked up at the big scoreboard, and it said 157.7 kilometers per hour.
Whoa!
So I thought Shane Warne is absolutely right. And I looked up at Shane Warne having a huge grin on his face and said, "I told you so." He got me out the last ball of the over. I was happy to go. I was caught by Ricky Ponting. The other guy was Shoaib Akhtar. Shoaib was, well, wow. He was rapid. He was absolutely out of this world. When he came on the scene, 99 World Cup, he was the sensation. His first wicket of the World Cup was against Australia when he yorked Adam Gilchrist at 98.2 miles per hour.
Whoa!
So this kid, everyone was saying, "Watch out for Shoaib Akhtar, watch out." And we watch out? He was unbelievable. Unbelievable. So yes, batting for me at my back end of my career wasn't fun. I didn't enjoy it. I was hit a number of times. I was cleaned up a number of times. I was hit by Ambrose, laid me out in Port Elizabeth.
I know.
And and Akram as well. Wasim Akram, left arm over into you all the time. So and Messi facing those boys. But that's what it is down there at the tail end.
Very true. But also
there's no place to hide.
Very true. And I mean, in your career, you also dished out a few. So there's a fair balance, eh?
Oh gosh, absolutely. You know where you stand with that. There's no. It's a tail end war, and these days, and I think tail end batting has got so much better, purely because of that.
That's
There's
true.
more emphasis now on scoring big runs at 9, 10, 11. So those guys now, Mitchell Starc, Brett Lee became a good batter. Mitchell Starc sorted his batting out. Dale Steyn could score some runs for South Africa. So Rabada. There's all these guys can hold their own now.
That's very true. I love what you mentioned there with regards to messiness. And the moment you mentioned that, I thought of the classic scene of a day after playing some good cricket, and the kits always lying across the locker room. I would love to know, in your playing days, and also maybe as a coach, who would you think was the messiest in terms of the kits? Because sometimes your pads are lying around, sometimes you just leave your bats lying around in the locker room. Is there any specific individual that was specifically messy with their kits, or they just left their kit lying all over the place?
Yeah, Sean Pollock, 100%. Sean Pollock was the worst. He was the absolute worst in terms of he'll just throw his pads, gloves everywhere. He'll get dressed in amongst all that mess, leave it like that for 5 days, and then and you don't dare change next to him because he just takes up all the space. And he was comfortably the messiest person. And in my coaching days, I would say Jonathan Trott with Warwickshire.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, he is this neatest has got to be Jacques Callis. Jacques Callis's corner. Jacques Callis's corner was always beautifully packed. Yeah. Bats are all aligned. Shoes are all facing the same way. He always said, "Just get away from me. Give me my space." So yeah, he was pretty cool. He was pretty cool. He was in England we have dressing room attendants. They always come and clean up, but they don't dare touch any player's kit. They just leave them as they are because players are so meticulous in how they left their kit after the day. They say, "Just leave it. That shirt, do not wash this shirt. That's going." Atherton was like that. Atherton, he nearly made me pass out one day when I walked past him. He scored 100 in Joburg and wore the same shirt the next Test match. So that's how sometimes superstitious these guys are. But that's just it's it's a funny world, and what works for you works for you.
That's very true. And I'd like now to shift the focus to the shift from being a player to now being a coach, because I think in terms of coaching, and you mentioned how important it was for you to go over to Warwickshire and how important that was for you as a player as you were developing in your game. How has coaching changed over the last few years? Because you've now experienced it for over, let's say, 3 to 4 decades.
Yeah. So the immediate transition from player to coach is, some guys think that it's all about your experience, that will make it through, that will push you through, and it'll be fine. But it's actually not like that. It's not an easy transition. Initially, your experience works, and then you realize you're actually working with people, and you still have to find out what those people are like. You need to have a great understanding of who you're working with, because obviously everyone's different, and you need to treat everyone on a different in a different way. So, and understanding, finding out what those guys are about, what their game is about, and then so it took me a while. It really took me a while, and I think that spending 2 years with Paddy Upton and Gary Kirsten in the Proteas setup, really opened my eyes a great deal in terms of how they went about, their blueprint, how they went about treating the Indian cricket team when they won the World Cup in 2011. Was I couldn't stop asking Paddy questions about, how did you treat Tendulkar different to Sehwag, to Dhoni, to they dealt with unbelievable egotistic people in the Indian team, but they found a way individually to get those players to play for them, and I think that is skill. So the game still remains basic.
Yes.
Bat and ball remains basic. The attitude towards the game has changed now. It's more aggressive, it's more expansive, it's more risk, and that is what 2020 cricket has brought. But I think to add to my philosophy is to bring an empowerment element to coaching, to say to a player, you don't have to worry to fail. That famous saying about train to win and learn to lose. So, but today's player is, I've found a lot of it, and I've seen it, and is so worried about what the coach thinks, and less of, what, you're allowed to fail. It's okay to fail, fine, but you gotta not stop expressing your flair every single day. And that's my philosophy, because I knew how I grew up. If I think about it, those guys like Hansie Cronje, who gave it to me, he gave me a license to express my pace, to express the risk I wanted to take, because he knew that I was a match winner. So what do match winners do? The moment you cuff them, the moment you shackle them and tell them you can't be that expensive, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. So I was so lucky that Bob Woolmer gave me that, Hansie gave me that, to go and just give it a crack. So when you fail, it's fine. That's okay. So so that is my way of treating it as well, because I have a very good understanding of what I feel our players need to be successful. And that's what I'm looking forward to for this young squad at the Knights this next year. And hopefully we will have a season.
Definitely.
So it's a tricky one. It's a really tricky one. You have to find a fantastic balance between giving them the rope to be able to succeed and express their flair, and also have a solid game plan in place where you have to accept that game plan can go wrong at some point. And how those and giving those guys giving them the rope to figure it out for themselves as well, because there's a huge responsibility thing on this, and that's what I don't see in especially at first class level. There's not that so much player responsibility in, the coach told us to do this and the coach told us to do that. That's what. So I'm going to try and unravel that whole thing and saying, right, you know what, you've got freedom to do what you want to do. This is the game plan. If we don't quite get there, what is your next step to make that work? So, and for him to go and figure it out. So that's how, that's how you generate and fast forward the player responsibility on himself, but also the leadership within the group. That's how we grow as leaders. And that for me, leadership for me is everything, because I was allowed in my own way to find my own leadership qualities in a leader in a bowling group. So look, it's fairly complicated. But in a nutshell, that's what I feel, can work.
Very true. I love what you mentioned there, because coaching is such a technical thing, especially in a sport that is so technical like cricket, and how the modern game has evolved. But when I think of some of the coaches that have actually done this well and have been so successful, a name that you've mentioned now, Gary Kirsten, what do you think made him stand out as a coach, both in South Africa but also in India?
Well, it's a great story, that actually, because India approached Gary, and he's very open to that. I actually almost fell off my chair when I heard this, because it was so honest, and it was so Gary Kirsten the way he did it.
Yeah.
And they flew him over there expecting him to do a full-on presentation, but they never told him. They never told him that he must come and do a presentation. So he arrived there, sat outside the door. They called him in, and I'll keep the story very short, but they called him in and they said, okay, so what is your presentation? And he said, you never told me. Okay. Oh, they asked him a few questions. They made him sit outside the door. They called him in about 2 hours later, said, well done, you're the Indian coach.
Wow.
So he went home and thought about this, and how am I going to do this? How am I going to coach this Indian team that have got all these amazing superstars in them? And then, the light went on. Paddy Upton and said, listen, how are we going to do this? You need to help me to coach this team. And that's how that relationship started between Paddy and Gary, where Paddy was he's a professor, he's a psychologist, he's a very, very intelligent man, and he works with businesses. Loads of people can go on his website, and he's got a book out now, The Barefoot Coach, which is a brilliant book, absolute brilliant book, and tells you around really of teaching people and people teaching other people. So it's an awesome, and that's how Gary and Paddy went about this thing of, the Tendulkars, the Dhonis, the Sehwags, you just name those names, just roll them off. But they had this method, they had this way of getting this team together to play for them. And of course, when they won the World Cup in 2011, that's the first thing that Tendulkar said, that, we played for Gary Kirsten. It's a long story, but there's for those who are looking for that book, go and look it up. You'll learn a lot from that. It's absolutely amazing.
Sure, no, that's amazing, and I think for a young cricketer to be able to hear such a story, it speaks of the journey that one has to also travel, but also some of the principles that come with having a great coach. And I mean, the ability for you to play for your coach is incredibly powerful. It speaks to unity as well in terms of a team unit. But having looked at all of these amazing people around you in terms of your playing career, now when you specifically made that shift to say that I'm now going to go into the coaching world, and looking at your coaching resume across Sri Lanka, England, as well as South Africa and New Zealand as well, what specifically are some of the standout points that you have taken away from so many dressing rooms?
Well, yeah, it was a awesome front row seat in sitting. Not just the coaches themselves being in that dressing room. You know, you sit in an RCB change room, and you look around that change room, and you see Gale, Coley, De Villiers, Watson, Dan Vittori, he was the coach, Trent Woodill, another feisty young Australian coach. But and you go around the players and you just listen to their stories, and you think, wow, you know, Watson, I love the guy. He's just an absolute gem of a bloke. You know, I heard so many stories about him, and I'm thinking, how can you possibly be so wrong? And having Shane Watson, he just shared so many things about their dressing room and how they involved their culture. So those words jumped at me. And I've always believed that the best teams have a very, very strong identity, a very strong culture, and unbelievable values. And those players, they will all say that when all the success that they've had, they've always had those things in place. That great Australian team, you know, you go to this wonderful world of a coach being in a position where he doesn't actually coach. You've reached the stage of a self-sustainable team, which takes a long time to establish. And all those coaches, you know, I was with the Australians, I was with Darren Lehman, I was with John Wright, Australia, I was with Peter Moores in England. He's going to kick me for not remembering this. The Sri Lankan coach and he's a South African. Well, I'm having a dark moment. Graham Ford, got him.
Yes.
So, and they all talk about this bubble of success, or the pyramid of success. But the Australians in that year, when they won everything in the early 2000s, they absolutely obliterated every team. They were self-sustainable because they had so many leaders within their group, and that's the toughest thing to establish. And those are the things that I made notes at night when I in my room, when I, you know, after every late night of ours during the IPL and you can't sleep. Those are the things you write down. Those are the things you memorize and you write down. You know, these are the things you build presentations on. But most recently, I've done a lot of research on coaches in the NFL. I find that fascinating.
How so?
I just, you know, there's a coach that they've rated as the best coach in American sport history, and that's Bill Belichick. And he's won 6 Super Bowls with the New England Patriots. And I've started looking this guy up. And not just recently, but before. Just sort of, you know, who's this guy, Bill Belichick? I want to know more about him. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating in his world of how he sets up a team mentally. They make sure in the draft that they buy the best players they can possibly buy, but also his philosophies and his cultures and values and identities never change. He reinforces that big time, and that's why he's got so much respect, you know. So the research on other coaches is wonderful, and the access you have now to see how players create successful teams is even more so. So, but I've written so much stuff down on my own and sort of packaged them here and there, and learning from other coaches. And coaching is learning every single day. You learn something new, you know. So it's a fascinating but very interesting world.
I think that's very true, because you have to continuously learn in anything, especially modern day sports. You have to continuously progress and find new methods to improve your teams, because the other teams are doing exactly the same. And we live in the information age where teams are literally in the business of collecting information and hiring the best coaches. So you as a coach also need to ensure that you're continuously sharpening your axe as well. So shifting a little bit towards the VKB nights, looking at some of the young players that you've got in your squad, I mean, you've got a nice young seam attack as well. In terms of young players, many coaches have also spoken about egos. How do you manage egos? How do you bring out the talent within some of those shy blokes that don't necessarily see the talent that lies within them, but also calming down some of the big egos in the team as well? So you've got a young team. What is your approach going to be with the VKB Knights?
Well, again, I have to say it's an absolute privilege being back in Bloem.
Yeah.
You know, it's been a long time, and now to be at the helm of it all is it's a wonderful feeling, first of all, and it's not like you're coming into the unknown. You know the system, you know the place, you know the ground. The only thing that's a little bit uncertain is that I do not know the players all that well. So I've only been there on a consultancy basis in October last year and in February. And then you start sort of, you know, you're making your own notes about players. You know, what are they like? You know, and so the little tests that you do on players at training to see what sticks in them, how they answer certain questions, how they just to understand their values and as a person moving forward. So I think, first of all, I think we've recruited well. I think I have to say as well that we've lost a few. We've lost 5 guys that have moved on. And I want to wish those guys, you know, those are the hardest, toughest things you got to do as a coach, is to let other players go. You know, you can't do much about those other guys who want to go and express themselves somewhere else, that they feel it's a need for them to go somewhere else. But then you got to tell guys that they don't have a contract, you know. So I just want to, first of all, use the opportunity to say to those guys, you know, I wish them well in their journeys moving forward. And what they've done for the VKB Knights before has been, you know, inspiring. Then, you know, it's a new test for them. It's a new challenge for them, whether they go to other teams. I know a couple stayed with the Free State team, which have got amateur contracts, junior professional contracts. So it's a and then you got all the other guys. We've contracted 16 players, and have awarded one of the players, Duan Janssen, a rookie contract. Duan is the twin brother of Marco Janssen. Unbelievable how, you know, left arm over, very tall, 6'4" plus, can bowl with decent pace, and he can bat as well, you know. So the other player I want to mention, and I think we got to keep an eye on this young man because he's impressed me a lot, is Jacques Snyman. Jacques has, I heard at the start of the one-day campaign that this kid can hit a cricket ball a long way. Boy, and was I happy to see that. Big, strong boy from the Northern Cape. He's a lovely, humble young guy, and I think what he's done, putting his stamp on the game, has done so well early on. He has got a huge 100 against the Warriors, and then he got 50 odd against the Lions. This guy can play, you know. So just quietly, I think he's thrown his name in the hat for selection maybe for the World T20. But I don't want to get him too excited. But yeah, look, I think he's already been talked about. He's a young guy. And I also think he's got the technique to play in the red ball game as well. So, you know, not just to shut people off. I think those sort of players, those impact players now, they make a very, very big difference in a red ball game as well. So, and then, of course, we signed 5 new players. Farisco Adams from the Cobras. Alfred Matoa from the Titans, Big Michal Pretorius, exciting, you know, anything about fast bowling excites me. So I I like this kid. I've been keeping an eye on this kid now for a couple of seasons. He's had very limited time playing for the Lions, but when he has played, and he's made an impact because he's got something. I like that.
Yeah.
He's got something. He's a big, burly, strong guy, and he gets it down the other end quite quickly. So, and that's what I like working with those sort of people, because I think he can add value. And his aspirations, of course, playing for South Africa, he wants to. And but let's as I've said to him, we've got to stay patient with him.
Yeah.
And slowly getting him in. More game time means more experience and more success, hopefully. And then Jonathan Van Dier, left-hand batter, also played for Royal Challengers Bangalore in the IPL. Exciting young batsman,
Yes.
top of the order. And I think what we have now is a few guys which will make selection difficult.
Yeah.
With Andries Gous, Jacques Snyman, and Van Dier batting at the top. Or down that middle order, and so, but at least we've got guys there who are we can spread around and see. And then of course Matthew Kleinfeld, opening batsman, who's signed also from the Cobras. So look, it's exciting times, and my as we've spoken now, Aaron, is about philosophies and culture and these kind of things. I genuinely believe at the Knights that we haven't had an identity, and we can get our brand stronger, and I think we deserve that. We in the Central Region deserve to make that a powerhouse again. And I go back to those days where we had so much success under Cronje, and the players that were there, the Wilkinsons, the Staines, Mickey Arthurs, Brad Player, Corey van Zyl, all those guys has put such a huge imprint in there, and that's without being hastily about what I want to achieve there. And I know I'm a process coach. I'm not looking for instant success. I'll be the last man. That's like putting a gun to my head, to be honest. There has to be a process in place. And I think that will ease the players as well. That will help me find my feet as a coach quickly, and the guys around me. So we've also made changes there. We know we welcome aboard JP Trichard, a very passionate coach from the Northern Cape, who I like. I love his work. I love his intensity. And then I felt it was necessary to have a batting coach. And there's a very unassuming guy who I've been watching there at the cricket ground, that's been going in and out of the cricket. In the indoor center. His name is Gerrit Maria. Yeah. And he coached the Titans, and he's got his own academy there. And I've got to know this guy a bit better and find out a lot of things about him. He's a very clever man, and we've got him on board for the summer. I think that's what I really felt is missing is that connection between. Because batting is such a confidence thing, and it's such a technical thing at some point. And this guy, Gerrit, has got that now of sorting those kind of things out. So we are, surrounding ourselves with some good people. I think is a very smart thing, and I think we as a coaching team will work well together, moving forward from next season.
Definitely, I love the fact that you've got almost your ducks in a row. It's a well-oiled machine that is just ready to start the new season. But of course, one of the important aspects about any professional sports, the reason why we as sports fans get access to watching some of our heroes perform live, and also having the players be able to play professional sports, is the sponsors. How important are the sponsors that are currently involved with the team, for example, VKB, and also the other supporting sponsors that also ensure that everything is going well with the team?
Well, Aaron, that is such a great question, because we can't survive without those people. Simple as that. And I think VKB has been absolutely nothing but phenomenal in supporting the Central Region. And I also think, and I'd like to say this now today, that we have been awarded a Mzansi franchise, and
Wow.
and so this is going to be a huge thing for the central region, and the other one goes to East London, the border region. So, but we have been, we've got one of the best cricket grounds in South Africa. We've had some really tough times in the past with conditions maybe not going our way, and in one-day internationals not being allocated to our region. And when VKB just has this wonderful way, and they're their people. And I've met the guy, the CEO, very briefly once or twice, but I can't wait to get connected with him. And I think that this, the 2020, the Mzansi, I'm not quite sure if it's going to be either the Super League or Mzansi League. I know that SuperSport are now going to be the broadcaster.
Yes.
It's going to be a fairly big deal, and it's going to go to a lot of countries. And I think that will even put our region and VKB right out there. So, and other partners as well, Biogen South Africa, and a few others, as that's I need to get that right. Magnificent, got it. So these people play such a massive part in our lives, and to go around the country and you've got that VKB on your shirt, and all those other sponsors on our shirts, we can't say thank you enough for what they've done. But I just think that now having a central franchise who's going to compete in the Mzansi League is going to be so much more powerful for our brand that we want to build.
Definitely.
And the players building their own brand.
Definitely. I think it would be a crime if I did not ask the great Allan Donald about the state of South African cricket. I think looking at the current setup, we now know that the new director is Graham Smith, the head coach, Mark Boucher, as well as the batting consultant is the great Jacques Collis as well. And I think South African cricket is experiencing some stability, if we can call it that, because we went through that period last year, especially beginning of last year, where there were issues behind the scenes and backroom issues, where now there's a sense of stability. And also we are looking forward to the T20 Cricket World Cup that might take place, and we're hoping that it does take place. But in your opinion, how do you feel about the state of South African cricket at the moment, and also looking into the future?
I must admit it was looking very, very, post Cricket World Cup last year. It was going towards a very dark place, and there was all sorts of things happening, as it was well documented without going deeply into that. And I think first of all the appointment of the director of cricket, Graham Smith, was an excellent one. And with so much experience and this vision that he has for South African cricket is a wonderful. I met up with him during the over 50s World Cup, which unfortunately got called off at Wynberg Boys High, and he only mentioned a couple of things that very briefly what he wants to do without letting the cat out of the bag. I'll leave that to him. So. It sounds exciting, and of course, having those Kolpak players back, that was, it's huge. It's absolutely enormous. Whether they win them over, I don't know. Let's make it work. But his vision is to get those guys back into our system. And that would really be making South Africa and making that Proteas setup a more challenging one. That's not just saying, okay, well, you Kolpak players come in here and your spots will be guaranteed. That's not going to happen. They will have to fight their way back in.
They'll have to earn those places.
Correct. But having them back, not only in the Proteas setup, but also in the provincial setup, would be such a big thing. It really would boost our cricket, our strength in our first-class cricket would be skyrocketing. So, and the knowledge that's going around, would be shared by these guys, especially with our youngsters. And I feel that our young guys now don't play enough under role models. They don't. So you'll either need a coach who's been there and done it to be that role model, but to play with someone like a Pike van Biljon, who is experienced, who's a fantastic captain and a fantastic leader. You know, players love that. They feed off that. And he's had his first taste now of playing for South Africa after so many years of fighting and trying to slam the door down, getting in there. So, look, I think for now, and what I'm hearing, things are looking up. Things are looking up. There's still a lot of work to do. And I'm so, for me personally, I'm so stoked that I'm backing into the South African first-class system and sharing my ideas, sharing my thoughts with players and bringing, I want to bring, in the night setup, I want to bring a test match culture. I want to bring an international feeling to this provincial setup. And I think that is something that players need to be much more aware of. I think for me, a player, if he gets selected, like I say, a Reinhard van Tonder gets selected for South African team, I don't want him to step up. And that gap is a big gap. Yeah. It can eat you up in a matter of weeks if you're not used to that intensity, that environment. So I don't want him to go in there not being prepared for what's lying ahead. He needs to come in there and he needs to be settled almost immediately. So that's where my job becomes big. So look, I just think the more good people gets involved in our journey to making South African cricket strong and stronger, so I'm just stoked. I really am so stoked to be involved and get my hands dirty.
That's good to hear, Allan. And it's good to have you back in local cricket, specifically in the central region. So thank you so much for coming back. I think touching on the central region, and as you know, throughout South Africa and throughout the world, this pandemic has really put all of us into something that we're not familiar with, something that isn't the norm. And a lot of people are going through quite a difficult time if you're not necessarily keeping your head up. And as you mentioned, keeping busy with a few things and keeping active as well. What message would you have for some of the loyal supporters of the BKB Knights, as well as people throughout Central South Africa at this point in time? Hopefully things do get better, and it does look that our president is working quite hard to make sure that those things are put into place. But just for South Africans to hear a special message from the great Allan Donald would be something quite special.
Well, there's one message that the president he doesn't effectively say it, but I think the great thing that comes out of those messages every time is please listen, please understand, please be disciplined. And we are saving lives right now, and that's what it's about. All sport, everything that's gone, everyone's, we're all frustrated, we're all feeling that we are imprisoned in our own homes, and when are we going to get that little bit of freedom that we can just have a week out of our homes? It's not going to be like that. And we've got to listen to the scientists. We've got to listen to the doctors, and just be a little bit more vigilant in how we approach this thing. There's a much bigger picture. This thing is so much bigger than any one of us we could ever predicted. And in a million years, sitting here thinking, I cannot believe I'm sitting in my own home now for the last 6 weeks. I cannot go outside that gate, and that's the way it has to be. If it takes another month, who knows? But I just urge people is to be smart, think smart, and look out not just for your own family members, but look out for other people as well. Because there's so many vulnerable people right now that need us, that need our support, it's sad to see sometimes on TV how these people are coping and what they have to do. It's tragic how these people have got no money, that has to be stuck in their houses, not doing much, and are quite sick and can't afford. To go themselves, can't even get outside again, get themselves tested. So look, it's just it's a simple thing. It's a big thing. It's much bigger than us. And please, everyone out there, take care, be safe, and be smart most of all.
Definitely. I love what you mentioned there is for us in today's day is to be a modern day superhero, and that is simply to stay at home and to just make sure that you're taking care of yourself and of those around you and those that might not have the support as well. And ultimately, in closing, I would love to ask you, I know that you're a man that loves his fast cars. You're a man that also bowled at quite a blistering pace. Have you ever received a speeding ticket? And if you did, what pace were you driving?
Yeah, I've had a few tickets. I do like fast cars, but I'm not a speed freak.
Yes.
Aaron, I must admit, I'm not. It is just, I would say, being a little bit impatient where
Yes.
I nudge it a little bit further than 60 kilometers an hour.
A little bit.
I have been, yeah. So I have been pulled off on motorways before between Joburg and Bloem, where I've exceeded 120. I must admit. Yeah, I've had a few speed tickets, definitely. You know, but I'm not a sort of guy that goes 180 or 190.
Yeah.
I don't like those sort of speeds. It's not me. So although you like things fast,
Yes.
you like to bowl fast. I even have my sidearm now. I like to throw fast.
Yes.
So your competitiveness never gets out there when you throw into someone. No, I'm quite. I'd like to think I'm quite sensible when it comes to speeding.
Definitely. No, as long as you aren't driving at your average, quote unquote, north of 140 in terms of how fast you used to bowl, on average, I'm very happy to hear that, Alan.
Thanks,
good.
Aaron.
Alan, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing your special message with South Africans. But most importantly, once we overcome this deadly pandemic, then we look forward to some great, good cricket in terms of the 2020-2021 season with the VKB Knights. I think the only thing that I need to get is a supporters jersey, and I'll definitely see you at the stadium.
I hope so. Good to see you. We definitely, you know, thanks to, I mean, also like to say thanks to OFM getting our brand out there, because I think it's important that we have that voice that speaks for us, that gets our brand out there. You know, I said to the players the other day, you know, we have a unique understanding, and then players can be quite fickle as well, because I've been there, because you worry about your own game, but also they have this wonderful opportunity to build their own brand.
Definitely.
And you know, guys like yourself, OFM, VKB, all these people, we have you know, social media. We've never had social media nowadays. So if you can get a word away here or there about the sponsors, then you do so. But now you've got social media, and the players have got a wonderful way now of using OFM, and OFM using us to build our brand. And I think it's worth mentioning to say thank you to you and your to OFM on getting us out there, because we'll need you throughout the season, and there's no question about it. And you know, so thanks for all that you guys are doing for us. It goes without saying, we need you guys to be our voice, and thanks for what you're doing.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for what you're doing for Central South Africa as well. Thank you so much for your time, Allan Donald. I really do appreciate it.